stage for the Great War was set by a dangerous mix of factors. Intense feelings of national pride, or nationalism, were on the rise, dividing Europe into fiercely competitive states. Countries were also scrambling to build empires, or colonies, leading to bitter rivalries. To protect their interests, nations were pouring money into their militaries, creating a tense arms race. Adding to this explosive situation, countries made secret promises to defend each other, forming powerful alliances. These alliances divided Europe into two opposing camps, increasing the risk of a major conflict. As tensions simmered, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand would ignite this powder keg, plunging the continent into war. If you want to learn more about nationalism, imperialism and the assassination, so, watch our previous videos. Link in description. When war finally erupted, it was a shock to the world. Nations scrambled to mobilize their armies, sending millions of young men to the front lines. What followed was a nightmare. Trench warfare turned vast stretches of land into muddy, rat-infested hellscapes. Soldiers endured unimaginable horrors, constant shelling, gas attacks, and the constant threat of death. It was a war that would shatter lives and change the world forever. Germany had a daring plan, a swift strike through neutral Belgium to defeat France before turning to face Russia. This was the Schlieffen Plan. Initially, it seemed to work like a charm. But then came the Battle of the Marne. The French and British, with incredible courage and determination, managed to halt the German advance. This unexpected turn of events changed everything. Instead of a quick victory, both sides found themselves locked in a deadly stalemate. Trenches were dug, and a brutal war of attrition began. No one knew it then, but this was just the beginning of a long, bloody conflict. While Europe was engulfed in a bloody stalemate, the Great War was far from a regional conflict. It echoed across continents. In Africa, colonial empires clashed, reshaping the map. In Asia, battles raged as European powers sought to expand their influence. Even the Pacific wasn't untouched. This global conflagration also transformed life back home. Women stepped into roles traditionally held by men, working in factories and hospitals. Rationing, propaganda, and civil unrest became harsh realities as nations strained under the immense pressure of total war. Life on the home front was a world away from the trenches, yet equally challenging. As men marched off to war, women stepped into roles previously considered male-dominated, running households, working in factories, and keeping economies afloat. Rationing became a way of life, as scarce resources were diverted to the war effort. Governments used propaganda to bolster morale, painting the enemy as monstrous and the war as a noble cause. Children were enlisted in the war effort through saving schemes and collecting scrap metal. It was a time of sacrifice, but also of extraordinary resilience. The war's economic impact was profound. For the belligerent nations, the colossal costs of the conflict led to soaring debts, inflation, and economic instability. Industries were retooled for war production, disrupting normal markets. For neutral countries, the war presented both opportunities and challenges. Some prospered by supplying goods to the warring nations, while others suffered from trade disruptions. The war economy, while necessary for the war effort, sowed the seeds of economic upheaval that would be felt for decades to come. The year 1917 was a turning point. Russia, a key player on the Allied side, was in turmoil. The Tsarist regime, weakened by war and corruption, collapsed under the weight of public anger. The Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, seized power, promising peace, land, and bread. This dramatic shift meant Russia withdrew from the war, freeing up German troops for the Western Front. It was a staggering blow to the Allies. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the United States, initially neutral, was drawn into the conflict by German aggression, including unrestricted submarine warfare. America's entry into the war injected fresh troops, supplies, and financial resources into the Allied effort. The tide began to turn. Battles like Belleau Wood, where American Marines fought with fierce determination, and the Meuse-Argonne Offensive, a massive Allied push, demonstrated the growing strength of the Entente. Germany, stretched thin and facing increasing unrest at home, found itself on the defensive. The war, which had seemed endless, was finally showing signs of reaching its conclusion. As 1918 unfolded, the Allied powers launched a series of massive offensives, breaking through the German lines. The Central Powers, exhausted and facing growing internal dissent, began to crumble. The collapse of Austria-Hungary and Bulgaria left Germany isolated. Facing overwhelming odds, Germany surrendered in November 1918. The war was over, but the peace that followed was far from just. The Treaty of Versailles, imposed on Germany, was a harsh document. It stripped Germany of territory, imposed crippling reparations, and assigned sole responsibility for the war. This punitive peace would sow the seeds of resentment and instability in Europe for decades to come. The Great War was a cataclysmic event that reshaped the world. Empires crumbled, new nations emerged, and the global balance of power shifted dramatically. The war's horrors led to significant social and cultural changes, from the rise of women's suffrage to advancements in medicine. The trauma experienced by millions left a lasting psychological impact. The conflict also paved the way for totalitarian ideologies to take root, ultimately leading to World War II. In many ways, the seeds of the 20th century's tumultuous history were sown in the blood-soaked fields of France and Belgium. If you found this journey through the Great War as fascinating and heartbreaking as we did, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth explorations of history and science. Let us know in the comments what other topics you'd like to see next.